Welcome to LC Screen Talk. My name is Larry, and this is my review of Pet Sematary. Another Stephen King adaptation. This time, another remake of a Stephen King adaptation. Pet Sematary tells the story of a family who moves away from the hustle and bustle of the city, only to find out that their new property holds a very special pet graveyard. Now, I used to really love the original Pet Sematary. I know I was such a macabre small child. The Poltergeist was my favorite film for the longest time as a little kid, and I loved Pet Sematary. However, it's definitely a film of its time, and it maybe hasn't aged the best. It seems a very good candidate for a proper horror remake. The trailers definitely sold this one as a proper horror. But is this the scary film the Stephen King novel deserves? Overall, I'd say yeah. I think this was a really solid movie. So let's go ahead and talk about the positives first. The biggest positive for me is creep factor and atmosphere. I have to say, I am a sucker for great horror atmosphere. Even if a film is not outright scary, a really dark, gritty, creepy, haunting style of atmosphere goes a long way in selling me on a horror film, and this one does it so well. First of all, the palette, the cinematography, the entire look of this movie is really dark, really gritty, but so appropriate to the tone that we're setting. The music is so good. Oh, I thought the music in this film was fantastic. The camera work was mostly done very well. And the tension. There was tension pretty much start to finish in this film. It never really lets up on the tension, and it builds and builds and builds as we move through until we finally hit some of the bigger horror elements of the film. And I thought several of these horror elements worked very well. We do deviate quite a bit, actually, from the original film. I can't speak for the novel because I personally have not read it. But having seen the original quite a few times, they take the general concept and then morph it into a new story where we have different characters doing a lot of different things that were not the case in the original. They were to varying results, but one thing I enjoyed was a bit of psychological warfare that's taking place. This spiritual entity that is basically haunting this family in the third act takes on a much more realistic and, as I said, psychological terror in this new adaptation. Whereas the first, they really had like hints of that, but this one went full on with it, and it added a whole new level of creep factor. Plus, a lot of this imagery was just utilized beautifully, where you're just like feeling icky as you watch it. And the first act in this film, particularly for me, was actually the scariest. When we're building that tension, I thought it worked superbly. The entire building segment of the film, as we work toward the haunt and the horror and the thrills, was expertly done. Like, really masterclass level, slow build horror, and I really appreciated that. What didn't work so well when it came to Pet Sematary? Well, I mentioned changes, and while I think there was a bit of positive with the change in the child utilized in the film and how they were utilized in the film, mostly I actually think it was weakened. Because the way they did this film, it seemed a little bit more generic than the first. It might be hard to find the whole child horror aspect of the first actually scary, but I think it gave the film a really hefty emotional punch in the third act that this one actually was lacking. We didn't get that moment we get in the first film with the dad and his son like crying. Obviously, I'm not going to go any further than that if you haven't seen the original, but there's a really great moment there. We don't get anything like this. There was a slight attempt at it, but it failed miserably. Also, I thought the very end was kind of cheap sequel bait that I didn't appreciate. A much less conclusive ending than the original film. And then the special effects in that third act got real wonky, which added to the kind of generic feel of the finale. Another aspect I thought we could have done better here is the whole sister sub storyline. I think it's done way better in the original, if I'm being honest. That is like the standout creep factor from the original is the sister, and in particular when you kind of just hear her calling and see her in that room, it's like, oh, this film, she's there. We have that very strongly in the film. They added some new stuff that worked really well, but I needed that defining moment. I really wanted that voice calling out and getting that like turn. Oh, I love that moment in the original. And that's kind of a problem here is we don't have those standouts. We don't have that big emotional moment at the end. We don't have that real high impact moment with the sister. We do have some new great imagery involving those animal masks, and I would actually say the cat is utilized much better in this film, and the cat actually gets several beautiful moments in the film. But I was lacking those real iconic impacts. So it's going to be hard to distinguish Pet Sematary come the end of the year from all the other horror imagery I've seen throughout the year. I also think the patient from the beginning, the like spirit guide ghost that has horror elements to him as well, wasn't utilized as well here. He didn't really have a purpose, honestly. Whereas he was a much more integral part to the original story. Still there, still very prevalent in the film overall, but seemed out of place. But overall, I think that Pet Sematary was a very good remake that upped the ante when it comes to actually being a remake and retelling this story. They changed it to validate its worth and then delivered a solid, really creepy, well executed horror film. While some aspects still do fall short of the original film, I say this is definitely one to check out. In particular, if you are a fan of the horror genre, there's plenty to love when it comes to Pet Sematary. So I say give it a full price ticket. Head in when it's nice and dark out. Come on out in the middle of the night and have a good horrific time. So that is my review of Pet Sematary. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, go ahead, click like down below and subscribe to the channel so you are always up to date on our latest videos. Also, join in on the discussion. Are you excited to see Pet Sematary? Or have you already seen it? If you have, what were your thoughts? Let me know either in the comment section down below, or you can hit me up on Twitter. I love you all so much for your support. Mwah! Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!